Hi guys, my name is Molly Weglars, and today I'm going to be talking about the physics of coral reef restoration. As many of you know, our reefs need help. In the last 30 years, 50% of all coral biomass on the globe has perished due to global climate change. So that's why reef restoration is an important project facing both the scientific community and the world. And physics, as in the science, aids restoration. The main restoration mechanism we're going to be talking about today is outplanting, which is the process of planting coral back onto the reef, similarly to how you would plant a tree in the ground after a natural disaster wipes out a forest. And physics helps us to assess if a reef is, or a certain area of a reef is a good place for outplanting. Coral has specific conditions that make it happy. It likes to occupy a specific depth in the ocean so that it gets enough light, but not too much. So therefore, biologists need to have an understanding of depth, electromagnetic radiation, and color visibility in order to plant coral in places where it will survive. So the first thing that I want to talk about is apparent depth. Objects in water are farther than they appear. Anyone who has snorkeled on a reef like this one pictured knows that you can swim down and keep swimming and you don't get any closer to the reef. That's how far down it is. The reason for this is refraction, which we recall is the bending of a light wave's path as it passes across the boundary between two different materials. And in this case, those materials are air and water. Now, if biologists are wanting to assess the health of a reef to see if it's a good place to take coral samples from or to plant coral, they need to know the depth that the coral is occupying. So they can use Snell's law of refraction to see how far down the coral actually is. If you recall, Snell's law uses the index of refraction of two materials, in this case the air and the water, to find the disparity between the actual depth and the apparent depth. And it's useful to keep in mind that not all depths are created equal. Like I said, corals have a happy medium of depth where they like to live. Here we can see a different example of depth. This individual is swimming over what's called a patch reef, which is in contrast to the barrier reef, which we saw in the slide before. There's still a bit of depth here, but it's obviously much less than the previous image, and you can see that different types of reefs exist in different types of water. Now, the reason that different types of reefs exist in different types of water is because of electromagnetic radiation. The coral behaves differently because of the light and subsequent heat that occupies their habitat. So first of all, coral needs sunlight because it hosts a mutualistic photosynthetic algae within its tissue, which is a main provider of the coral's energy and food source. So it needs the sunlight, and coral therefore can't live past a certain depth because the light rays don't penetrate that deep. However, corals also cannot withstand temperatures above a certain point. So if the water gets too hot, they don't enjoy a nice, relaxing bath in the warm water. They get stressed and they die. So sometimes coral doesn't thrive in very shallow water or too close to the surface because it's too hot. So what are our physical reasons for this? Starting with depth, the light can only penetrate so deep because of its energy level and because of diffraction and scattering. So remember that light waves don't just help us see, but that they literally carry energy. What this means is that as the light waves enter the water, the energy starts to dissipate as the light collides with the water molecules. Combined with all kinds of diffraction and scattering, the light just stops carrying at a certain point. So that answers our depth question. But it also answers our heat question. As the energetic light waves transfer their energy to the water heats up. It's mostly the surface water that takes the heat. Further down, there's still light enabling us to see, but the water is not as hot. And the reason that we have this difference in heat is because the energy from the light gets absorbed by all the water molecules that it hits on the way down. So the energy dissipates as it penetrates. So that's why it's hot on the surface, not so much deeper down, though you can still see. And we have a word for this phenomenon. It's called intensity. And that is the variable S, as you can see in the second equation on our slide. Closer to the surface, the light rays are more intense, and the energy has not had the chance to dissipate yet. So all of the energy is getting transferred to the water molecules that are first hit, the surface molecules, and the energy gets less and less as it travels down. So we can still see closer to the deeper depths. And that brings us to our next topic, which is color visibility with the aid of electromagnetic radiation. So as we just mentioned, the deeper and deeper you go, the less light there is, so the less color you can see. Color pigment is an indicator of coral health, so it's important that we be able to see what colors the coral tissue is. Deep on the reef, an interesting phenomenon happens. As you know, different wavelengths of electromagnetic radiation have different energies. Higher frequency light has higher energy than lower frequency light. And since it's the light's energy that allows it to penetrate deep into the water, it makes sense that the higher energy light is going to travel deeper. Now, on the visible light spectrum, which is the section of the electromagnetic spectrum that we can see, not all visible light has the same energy. Blue light at the higher frequency end has a higher frequency than red light, which is at the lower frequency end. So therefore, blue light has more energy, it travels deeper, and deep on the reef, everything starts to look blue. Example, these are some images taken by my PI, Dr. Deanna Soper, when she was scuba diving in Florida. And when you scuba dive, you get down much deeper than when you just snorkel. And as you can see, both of these images look blue. This is because blue light travels more efficiently through the water because of its higher frequency and higher energy. This is for the same reason that you get sunburn from UV light, because UV light has higher energy. And another interesting fact is that at these depths, it's not that the red light is harder to see. You can't see it at all. It's only blue light that's down here. So if you're wearing a scuba suit that has red designs on it, you won't be able to see them when you get down this deep. And pictured here on the right, we have a coral species being treated with antibiotics. And on the left, we have an image of the coral species Orbicella faviolata, which is our coral species that we study here at UD. So back to our color visibility, I have one final point that I need to make, and that is the beautiful color of these corals on this screen. Like I said, color is an indication of health, and corals will change color when they're stressing and in decline. So these beautiful colors that you see here, the purple, the blue, and the yellow, these are not the coral's natural colors, but the colors that they change to when they're close to death. They take on these brighter fluorescent colors, which are easier to see, so that you can literally see when they're in danger. And we should pay attention. We don't want this beautiful and important part of nature to be lost forever. So that's all I've got for you guys. I hope you remember from this presentation that if we bring all of the sciences together and get educated, we can make the oceans a better place for our coral, and we can make the planet a better place for us. Thanks.